Hi everyone. It has been a little bit since I was in front of the camera and making a video, so I appreciate you being here and tuning in today. I wanted to, first of all, say hello, Happy New Year, Happy 2222, Groundhog Day, all those exciting things. Just doesn't really have anything to do with why I'm doing my video now, but here I am. Um, I, first of all, let me go back. If you have not been on my channel before, my name is Johanna. This is a channel dedicated to XJW activism, and I have a lot of videos, few videos before this, really all talking about my personal experience being a woman raised as a Jehovah's Witness. With that said, this week the XJW community had a little bit of a kerfluffle based on a fellow activist's some revelations. I am not going to go into it. I'm not going to dedicate time to things that I feel like there's a lot of information out there, and I don't want to use this short video to discuss all of that goings on. However, I have already had kind of in my mind in a pipeline of wanting to do a video anyways about growing up more in depth, what it was like to be a woman in the organization, specifically how it impacts your view of yourself as a sexual being and any other maybe issues surrounding sex when you're a woman. So this was kind of a perfect time to do it because it is kind of a hot topic right now on some forums, and I'm seeing most of the conversation being had by straight men who are ex-JWs. As a disclaimer, I am not saying that if you were a man raised as a Jehovah's Witness that you did not have sexual repression, because you certainly did. We all, men, women, whatever, were sexually repressed and taught unhealthy, unnatural views of sex. So that absolutely is the case. And certainly some of them, when they got out and woke up or got free of the organization, maybe did not handle everything as well as they could have once they escaped, because you just kind of feel like, okay, you're at sea. You're just kind of lost at sea. So I'm absolutely not taking away from the experiences of my fellow ex-JWs who are straight men. With that said, I will say that with that voice being the loudest right now, what I personally am seeing online and other places is it's kind of drowning out or not shining a light on women's experiences and obviously the LGBTQ community. Since I am not part of the LGBTQ, I am not going to speak a lot about that because it's not my personal experience and I don't want to overstep. However, I will say that that is the most complicated and painful journey for somebody who was a witness to escape. So if you have an opportunity to find ex-JWs that are part of that community and educate yourself and support them, please do so, because I personally cannot imagine the strength that it takes for a person to come out and live their authentic life after being a witness. Since I, a straight woman, have my own experience, that's what I need to spend some time and talk about. The other reason is, there's the song in the old Brown songbook from the scripture that says women are a large army. And the amount of women that are currently witnesses and have left is very, very large. So we certainly are not a minority when it comes to XJWs. So I'm just trying to do my little part and give some of us a voice and assurance, as well as hopefully maybe a little insight and education to our other fellow XJWs. I'm just going to say this as plainly as I can. Men, straight men, I appreciate you, but you do not have a monopoly on sex drive. You do not have a monopoly on thinking that you need sex and want sex a lot. I think that is misrepresented and misunderstood often because you were told that was the case, as well as women, it was very, very taboo to admit that you enjoyed it or you wanted it. The other part of that is, as you come to grips with a sexual desire as a straight male and you are exploring that, I really think it's important that you remember you are literally the most accepted in society and in the society, because regardless of how often you want to have sex, you're wanting to have sex with a woman, and that's considered natural. So for women, we are told that, you basically only want to have sex with a man first, and then it's your husband. As a witness, I was married at that time, and we actually were disfellowshipped. We weren't dating. We were each disfellowshipped, and we met, or we got together, got married, and then we got reinstated as witnesses together once we were married. After we were married and reinstated, I think it took like 6 months for us to get reinstated. The elders had a meeting with us because we were, it was so weird. It was so awkward. We were married. We'd only been married 6 months, but now we were witnesses again. And so they wanted to have this marriage council talk with us as to what our roles were expected to be. So, head of the house and the subservient wife conversation. And they did discuss sex, what was allowed and not allowed. So of course they have extreme restrictions on, basically just penetrative sex. There's nothing else beyond that. No toys, no anal, no oral. It's just very by the book, missionary standard intercourse. Also, they did talk about frequency. And as the woman in the relationship, I was the one that was counseled on being basically whenever my husband would be interested, but also not to show an unnatural appetite, is what they said. So, in other words, if I was in the mood and he wasn't, you were never supposed to broach that. You were never supposed to ask for it. So that is the once you're in a relationship or once you're married, their take on what your role is as the wife. And then if your husband is doing things like mine did, which is seeking excitement outside of the marriage, then it's obvious that you are not doing something exactly the way that you've been counseled to at home. That's, part of the issue. So it creates in you a very warped concept of sex, because up until that point, as you are single and a woman in the organization, you are constantly bombarded with dress and grooming, as their phrasing for it. So, you have to keep things covered. So, absolutely no hint of cleavage. Things were not to be, more than like at your knee was like risky business. It was supposed to be below your knee. And never any clothing that was too tight, too snug. But then also your actual demeanor. So, not to be flirtatious, not to sashay around at the Kingdom Hall, not to be touchy-feely with the brothers. So, no hugs unless it was someone that was family member or like an older one. Women were constantly told, basically, not to even wear too much makeup or basically don't take very good care of yourself, like to the point where you look extremely attractive, because that was a temptation for men. There was even to the point of talking about, before you went to the meeting, you were supposed to sit down. A woman was supposed to sit down, and you were supposed to look down as far as you could. And if you could see any hint of cleavage, you needed to put on a camisole or something, because those poor brothers handling the microphones, they had to stand next to you up here looking down. And if they could see anything, you'd be tempting them into something that was terrible, awful. So we were always told basically to be ashamed of our bodies. I mean, you had to like cover up and not be too obsessed with like exercising or taking excellent care of yourself, because all of this could lead to some terrible, horrible temptation for these weak brothers. So yeah, that was one step. And that was, I mean, from a young age, you're raised that way. I know, even when I was like prepubescent, getting to, I don't know, 9 or 10, it was even, how short my skirts were and all that good stuff, which shouldn't have even been a thought for a kid, but that's neither here nor there at this point. But it was because, they're training you from a young age that you're going to grow up and you're going to be this modest, meek woman. But then also what is never talked about is sex drive. Like, it's talked about with boys, and even in the articles, when in the Young People Ask book and so forth, when they would talk about masturbation, it was 90% aimed at men, because men were the ones that this was this huge temptation for. And I'm sorry, but that is not true. So if you did even have any inkling of like some kind of desire tingling in the nethers as a woman, you were like a pariah in your own mind, because that was not normal and it wasn't okay. And it was something that was supposed to be reserved for your husband to bring out this desire in you. And so it really makes sex extremely taboo, to the point where even after being out for a long time, having a healthy, high sex drive, there still was that part of my brain that was like, this isn't normal. This isn't, maybe this, you're raised to think like, oh, that's like a guy, right? Like a guy does this and a guy does that. But I'm gonna be real honest, there are magazines like Cosmopolitan around for a reason, and girls talk, and women, we enjoy ourselves plenty. So this idea that men somehow have some kind of monopoly, or they're the ones that get a free pass on inappropriate behavior, never ceases at this point, and being out to kind of like blow my mind. With all of that said, I will say that as a straight female, I support open relationships, polygamy, anything, as long as it's consenting adults with an open, honest line of communication, like, go for it. Like, let your freak flag fly. I don't kink shame, like, whatever. But there is that part of, like, just be honest about it. Because we, as witnesses, it was ingrained in us as women, and the men were told, basically women, that, you know, you basically are prudes or not accepting. And honestly, that isn't the case. And if you run into, or you're really frank with a woman and she expresses that maybe certain things she doesn't agree with, that is no different than a man. I hate to break it to you, but not all men are as interested in some kind of wild lifestyle as people like to portray. So basically what I'm saying is it goes both ways. You have some women who are really DTF, and you have some men that are just not so much. So whatever it is, like, just stop pigeonholing people, and stop, please, can we agree that it is important to okay that women want to have sexual relations, that we want to do it often, that we want to get a little wild, like, that is a-okay. And I also believe that ex-JW women, more of us feel this way, but it's maybe still very taboo for us to express that. And we're getting into an age now where, thank goodness, things are starting to turn a little bit. And so there are more women feeling comfortable that you aren't going to be slut-shamed or you aren't going to be called names. But it's still there. And so I think the reason I'm putting this out there is to say, like, we need to all agree that sex is good and fun as long as it's consenting adults doing it, and there's that open and honest line of communication across the board. I don't know that I'll ever be able to properly drive home the point for me personally to express this and even use different verbiage surrounding intercourse, how difficult that it is and how many years that it's taken me to get to this point. Everything was so shameful when it came to sex. You know, we were taught that it could be enjoyable. So the witnesses don't necessarily feel that it's only for procreation. They do allow birth control to be used. But when it came to having sex for fun, even with your mate, they still had kind of guidelines. Like, you didn't want to enjoy it all the time or too often, because then you were idolizing the physical act, which blows my mind now. But because of that, like, women had to repress just as much as men their hormonal natural instincts for pleasure. And it is not okay. It does lead to all kinds of weird feelings and ideas, and the tabooness talking about any of it was just, I mean, I never had any kind of sex talk with any of my female relatives, any of my female friends that were witnesses, even some of my close and best friends. It wasn't until I was out and then I made established female friends, worldly friends, that those women were the ones that started helping me to see, like, this is okay, and, you know, do some experimenting and whatever it may be. And so to get to the point where not only am I accepting of, like, it's okay to enjoy that type of physical interaction, but to talk about it and to be like, listen, when it comes to being sexually repressed, I guarantee you that women had it just as bad as straight men, and on some level, dare I say, it was even a little bit more intense for us because we didn't have the men from the platform telling the brothers to be careful about the way that they stood there with their microphone because it might arouse the sister in her seat. I mean, there were some things about, like, don't wear your pants too tight, but it was not on the same level by any means. And so we were taught as women that A, you were the cause of impure thoughts and sexual arousal in men, and B, you shouldn't act on that. Even if you get married, and even if you're married to a man that you are attracted to, just follow his lead and don't be too sexually active because that is shameful. Jehovah's watching the whole time, which he's kind of a pervert, but that's besides the point. So that's just my personal experience, but I felt it was really important to get that out there because as you grow up and you become a mature human being, some people have even sought professional help from counselors to have a balanced mental view of themselves as a sexual being and understand what healthy outlets there are, and to be transparent and to be an honest, open person. And that's part of my journey. I just wanted to share that if you are a woman out there and you have impure thoughts, they're not impure at all. You're totally normal, and sex is fun, and sex is good and natural, and don't believe what you were told when you were a witness. Also, this is kind of like I said earlier, if our experience as women was difficult, the experience of the LGBTQ community was even more intense and more damaging. And so I don't think a day goes by that my heart doesn't go out to them, but also admire their strength and determination to, like I said, live their best, most authentic life. So that's it for me. I hope this wasn't too rambling. I did not make notes this time. I just have felt like I needed to get this out there, and here it is. Follow other XJW women who talk about sex and all things related to being a normal, functioning human. Until then, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, week, month, year. I'm sure I'll be back on here again soon. But until then, have a glorious, wonderful, cult-free day.